Hi, third graders! Today we're going to read Chapter 9 and Chapter 10 of George's Marvelous Medicine. Chapter 9 is called The Pig, the Bullocks, the Sheep, the Pony, and the Nanny Goat. At that moment, George's mother came back from shopping in the village. She drove her car into the yard and got out. She was carrying a bottle of milk in one hand and a bag of groceries in the other. The first thing she saw was the gigantic brown hen towering over little George. She dropped the bottle of milk. Then Grandma started shouting at her from the rooftop, and when she looked up and saw Grandma's head sticking up through the tiles, she dropped the bag of groceries. "How about that then, eh, Mary?" Grandma shouted. "I'll bet you've never seen a hen as big as that. That's George's giant hen, that is." But, stammered George's mother. "It's George's magic medicine," Grandma shouted. "We've both of us had it, the hen and I." "But how in the world did you get up on the roof?" cried the mother. "I didn't," cackled the old woman. "My feet are still standing on the floor in the living room." This was too much for George's mother to understand. She just goggled and gaped. She looked as though she was going to faint. A second later, George's father appeared. His name was Mr. Killy-Cranky. Mr. Cranky was a small man with bandy legs and a huge head. He was a kind father to George, but he was not an easy person to live with because even the smallest things got him all worked up and excited. The hen standing in the yard was certainly not a small thing, and when Mr. Cranky saw it, he started jumping about as though something was burning his feet. "Great heavens!" he cried, waving his arms. "What's this? What's happened? Where did it come from? It's a giant hen! Who did it?" "I did," George said. "Look at me!" Grandma shouted from the rooftop. "Never mind about the hen. What about me?" Here they are. There's George's parents looking up at Grandma, poking her head up from the roof. Mr. Cranky looked up and saw Grandma. "Shut up, Grandma," he said. It didn't seem to surprise him that the old girl was sticking up through the roof. It was the hen that excited him. He had never seen anything like it. But then who had? "It's fantastic," Mr. Cranky shouted, dancing around and around. "It's colossal! It's gigantic! It's tremendous! It's a miracle! How did you do it, George?" George started telling his father about the magic medicine. While he was doing this, the big brown hen sat down in the middle of the yard and went cluck, 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 cluck. Everyone stared at it. When it stood up, there was a brown egg lying there. The egg was the size of a football. Here's the hen and her giant egg. "That egg would make scrambled eggs for 20 people, Mrs. Cranky said. "George," Mr. Cranky shouted, "how much of this medicine have you got?" "Lots," George said. "There's a big potful in the kitchen, and this bottle here's nearly full." "Come with me," Mr. Cranky yelled, grabbing George by the arm. "Bring the medicine. For years and years I've been trying to breed bigger and bigger animals. Bigger bulls for beef, bigger pigs for pork, bigger sheep for mutton." They went to the pigsty first. George gave a spoonful of the medicine to the pig. The pig blew smoke from its nose and jumped about all over the place. Then it grew and grew. Here's the pig. He's had some medicine. Well, let's see if he gets as big as the hen did. In the end, it looked like this. You can see how giant the pig is compared to George and his dad. They went to the herd of fine black bullocks that Mr. Cranky was trying to fatten for the market. George gave each of them some medicine, and this is what happened. Okay, here they are. They're huge. Here's the cows. And then there's George and his father. So you see how big they are. Oh my gosh. Look at the house. Then the sheep. Here's the sheep. George and his father at the very bottom. You see how big those sheep are? He gave some to his gray pony, Jack Frost. Here's the pony. Now it starts off about the size of Jack. It's a pretty small horse. It gets bigger, blowing some smoke, and it's so big he can barely touch his nose. And finally, just for fun, he gave some to Alma, the nanny goat. Okay, this is a double page. So start with giving the nanny goat some medicine, blowing some smoke, getting a little dizzy and warm, and finally, it looks like he fell over in that one, and he gets really big. Look how big he is. And there's the boy. There's George. Okay, we're going to read chapter 10. This one's called A Crane for Grandma. Grandma, from high up on the rooftop, could see everything that was going on, and she didn't like what she saw. She wanted to be the center of attention, and nobody was taking the slightest notice of her. George and Mr. Cranky were running around and getting excited about the enormous animals. Mrs. Cranky was washing up the kitchen, and Grandma was all alone on the rooftop. "Hey, you!" she yelled. "George, give me a cup of tea this minute, you idle little beast!" "Don't listen to the old goat," Mr. Cranky said. "She's stuck where she is, and that's a good thing, too." "But we can't leave her up there, Dad," George said. "What if it rains?" "George!" Grandma yelled. "Oh, you horrible little boy, you disgusting little worm. Fetch me a cup of tea at once and a slice of currant cake." "We'll have to get her out, Dad," George said. "She won't give us any peace if we don't." Mrs. Cranky came outside, and she agreed with George. "She's my own mother," she said. "She's a pain in the neck," Mr. Cranky said. "I don't care," Mrs. Cranky said. "I'm not leaving my own mother sticking up through the roof for the rest of her life." So in the end, Mr. Cranky telephoned the crane company and asked them to send their biggest crane to the house at once. The crane arrived 1 hour later. It was on wheels, and there were 2 men inside it. The crane men climbed up onto the roof and put ropes under Grandma's arms. Then she was lifted right up through the roof. Here she is. Okay, it looks kind of crazy, but here's the crane, and it goes all the way up, and it kind of hooks around. They put the ropes around her arms, and then she's being pulled up, kind of like a weed from the ground. In a way, the medicine had done Grandma good. It had not made her any less grumpy or bad-tempered, but it seemed to have cured all her aches and pains, and she was suddenly as frisky as a ferret. As soon as the crane had lowered her to the ground, she ran over to George's huge pony, Jack Frost, and jumped onto his back. The ancient old hag, who was now as tall as a house, then galloped about the farm on the gigantic pony, jumping over trees and sheds and shouting, "Out of my way! Clear the deck! Stand back, all you miserable midgets, or I'll tramp you to death!" and other little silly things like that. Oh my goodness! Here she is. She is riding on Jack Frost the pony. But because Grandma was now much too tall to get back into the house, she had to sleep that night in the hay barn with the mice and the rats. Here she is, sleeping with all the mice and the rats. There's the family. I think that's the family. No, they look so small, but they're the mice. And here's Grandma. She's so big she had to sleep outside. Okay, tomorrow we will read Mr. Cranky's Great Idea. I'll see you then. Bye.